And welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm David Shannon, and thank you for joining me tonight. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth American. Thank you so much for joining me, and it's good to be back. Some of you may have wondered why this show has been on a hiatus in recent weeks. Many of you most likely already know, however. And the reason is tragic, from the point of view of those of us who remain. I wrote my script prior to the taping of this broadcast. I don't normally prepare things on script word for word, but given the situation and the subject at hand, I believe it is appropriate. Here we go. It is with great sadness to report that on February 16th, my dad, David Allen Shannon, went home to be with the Lord Jesus Christ. He was 70 years old. This was the culmination of a year-long battle against cancer in his liver. It was stage 4. I'll save you most of the details regarding his medical situation, which included other health issues. But suffice it to say, Dad put up a hard-fought battle. And in the end, his body just had nothing left to lend to the fight. I know personally that Dad wanted to live. His life mission was to provide for his family, that being my mom, myself, my cat, and our household. But one thing I can take comfort in. He is more alive now than he ever was on earth. In so many words, the Bible tells us that when we pass, we are absent from the body and present with the Lord. In recent weeks, I, yours truly, along with my family, have endured and continue the process of processing the shock and sadness of the loss of my dad. Yet I know that he is no longer suffering. Tonight, I dedicate this broadcast to the loving memory of my dad, and I invite you to continue to watch. It won't be long, but I hope that this can be rightly regarded as a tribute to a man that I am proud and honored to call my dad. I cannot think of a more perfect way to start my on-air eulogy, except to speak from the heart. My dad was a humble man, and I mean that in every and all sincerity. As far as I can remember, he was a man that did not seek fame or fortune, but to do what he loved in loving service of others. He loved music and had a guitar. Some of his favorite music were from John Denver, Peter, Paul and Mary, Aaron Copland, Herb Alpert, the Muppets, and others. He had a great sense of humor. He often paused before answering a question or responding to someone. To sum it up, he was like a walking encyclopedia. He amassed a wealth of knowledge, and I could ask him something and it wasn't long before he had an answer, often immediately. My dad, David Allen Shannon, was born on July 22, 1950, in Nashville, Tennessee. As an infant, he moved from Springfield, Tennessee to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and a few years later to the community of Carnes, just outside of Knoxville. During his time in Carnes, he earned the rank of Eagle Scout in 1967. Being proud of my dad, I followed in his footsteps many years later myself. By what I can best perceive, his early years were then marked by an aggressive pursuit of furthering his own studies. I long knew that he wanted to be a veterinarian early in life, yet the vet school was so strict on admission he just couldn't make it into the school. But I can personally say that his love for animals was self-evident. But he did not let that disappointment stop him. He first obtained a bachelor's degree of science in agriculture. Later, a Master of Science, and then finally becoming a PhD through a Doctor of Philosophy, his discipline, animal science, all of them from the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. Dad would go on to become a college instructor at Hiwassee College, located in East Tennessee. For most of his career, he endeavored to teach young students at college. In the early 1980s, he would meet a woman who would several years later go on to marry him, Nancy Marie Parker, and my dad married on August 11th, 1990 in Carnes. Only a few years later, they would move to a rural town in the Florida Panhandle. Dad served as a county extension agent in Calhoun County. That is where I came into the picture. My mom once asked God if it be his will that she wants to have a baby. Soon after, despite her age, I came into existence. And in October 1996, I was born in Tallahassee. Dad was so proud to have a son, so was my mom. It wasn't long until Dad would have to make yet another change in jobs, this time to become a college instructor at North Arkansas College in Harrison, Arkansas. He served in that role for 9 years. He also coordinated with the Arkansas Tech University. In Harrison, Arkansas, that was where I grew up. In the mid-2000s, changes were made at North Ark and Dad lost his job. So he had to make yet another career change. For over a year, my family struggled to make ends meet. Yet Dad never gave up his pursuit on providing for us. In 2006, he took a job at U.S. Customs and Border Protection as an agricultural specialist. It was a job with a lot of promise. There was just one problem. The options for where he would go seemed so prohibitive: New York, Los Angeles, or Miami. Dad decided on Miami. But because the cost of living was so high, my mom and I moved in with my grandparents, Nana and Granddaddy, just outside Knoxville. Dad, meanwhile, would move to South Florida and finally settle in Miami Beach. But despite this, my mom and I would often go down to Florida and vice versa to see my dad. My parents continued to love each other despite all the distance, and they endeavored to be reunited once again. We missed each other. After realizing that the cost of living wasn't too high, Dad continued to tirelessly search for a transfer, finally landing one in 2010 at Charlotte, North Carolina. Dad loved his job in Miami, and his coworkers loved him. Yet he loved my mom and I even more. And so we were reunited. Dad would go on to work 10 more years at the Charlotte airport. He had a very strong work ethic. He finally went on paid safety leave in late December, as the cancer was ravaging in his body. At the time, we had hopes of his eventual return to work. I can still remember Dad and I going into a Subway restaurant years after leaving Arkansas, following a canoe trip in the area. An employee there remembered Dad for once being his instructor at North Ark. By all known accounts, students regarded my dad as one of a kind. His remains were buried at Greenwood Cemetery in Knoxville, Tennessee. His heart was always with the great state of Tennessee. It is only fitting that his remains were buried in that state, a state he loved. His parents, William and Jean Shannon, went before him. His survivors are his loving wife of 30 years, my mom, Nancy Shannon, his son, me, Jonathan Shannon, sister and brother-in-law, Melinda and Alan Davis, and niece, Emily Hudson. As I said earlier, my dad did not seek fame or fortune. He did not like to brag about having a PhD. His mission was not for himself, but for his family. He loved my mom, and he loved me. And so the legacy of my dad is just that. He was a loving husband to his wife, and he was a loving dad to me. I will never be half the man Dad was. Yet I would not be half the man I am today if it weren't for my dad. I'm grateful that I was there with Dad in his final days. And especially, I am grateful that I was there with my mom when he drew his last breath. During this time, I now choose to take comfort in these words. Psalm 68:5 tells us that Father of the fatherless and protector of widows is God in his holy habitation. I will have some final words for this broadcast, but first I would like to play for you a portion of a film I made during my broadcast studies at Gaston College in 2017. It is my hope that you can at least catch a glimpse of who my dad was and is.
Over the last 20 years, tuition rates have skyrocketed, with some students paying as much as $40,000. So what's behind this trend? Dr. David Shannon is a veteran of college education who has taught at several colleges from the 1980s to 2005, including at Hiwassee College and North Arkansas College. He offers his opinion for the recent trends of higher education.
For most people, the primary purpose of going to college is to get a good paying job. There's some people that their primary purpose is to learn. And the two aren't mutually exclusive, but they are two different purposes, and there are certainly other purposes that students could have in going to college, but I think those would be the two primary ones. If you look at the purpose of college from the standpoint of attaining a job for a student, in some fields they have a problem because the college itself is aligned into different groups with commonalities, and the different kinds of colleges, the different junior colleges, community colleges, universities, the various names that you'd use for higher education, organize themselves into various groups, departments, divisions, colleges. If we're talking about universities, they generally have colleges within the university, and they're not necessarily aligned towards the jobs that their students will be looking for in the end. And that's a problem when you're doing a major. It's oftentimes the students' electives that are the most important thing, because within a major, everything's the same. Everybody takes the same package of courses or close to the same package of courses. So the more important thing for many students is what electives do they have to add to it.
With the newer options of technical training and online schools, what does the future hold for colleges and students in America?
I think people are upset about what's happening in the schools today for a lot of reasons. Historically, there was reading, writing, and arithmetic. And in some people's minds, that's all they need. Some people think the school is being a generator of people to go out and immediately get a job. Some people think of the school as being the K through 12 system as being purposed to put the student into college. And it is both those things, but it's neither of those things. Some people see it as a means of propaganda to indoctrinate, and it certainly does that. In the past, everyone stood up, saluted the flag, said the Pledge of Allegiance, and things like that. And that may be done today at some schools, not done at others. But the school defines a neighborhood. If they take the schools away from those neighborhoods for the K through 12 systems, then those little communities tend to die. There's no cohesion there. Having lived in a very rural area, I remember talking with a lot of people that, like myself, had moved into the area and had not really joined the community until their children went to school. I personally think that the monies involved in educating the students need to follow the students. I've lived in areas where the public schools were used by some people, but not used by others. When my family lived in Florida the first time, in some of the counties around us, most of the people were in private school. They were getting no help from the state or from the federal government towards educating their children, but they were still paying for it with their taxes. But most of them chose to put their students in private schools. And I'm not talking about rich people. I'm talking about middle-class people, because they did not like what the schools were doing. I think in general, our education system will improve if it's redesigned to follow the students. If the money follows the students, the public education systems will improve.
Dr. David Shannon now works for the U.S. Customs and Border Protection as an agricultural specialist.
I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who have offered their prayers and condolences during this very difficult time. In particular, I want to thank Nikki and Jim for helping, encouraging, and ministering to my dad as well as me and my family during my dad's final days here on earth. I would like to also thank Ben and Jonathan for their friendship. I can truly say that God could not have blessed me with better friends and brothers and sisters in Christ. I fully realize what a blessing I have. I would like to now take a moment to read some condolences that were offered online regarding my dad in recent days. I'm going to begin with this condolence from Neil Bonds. Quote, I am so very sorry for your loss. I remember Dr. Shannon from his time at North Arkansas College as I worked with him many years ago there. My younger brother was an agriculture student of his as well. He was very knowledgeable about his subject and certainly a nice colleague. Please know the entire family is in my thoughts and prayers. From Jill Jones. It is with much sadness that I write this. I worked with Dave since his arrival at Port 1512 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our daily interaction included me asking Dave how he was doing. At first, he would barely respond, but after I did this to him every time that we encountered each other, he eventually would give me a great answer and smile. We enjoyed daily conversations and jokes. It was a pleasure knowing such a great man. My family prayers go out to his family. He will surely be missed. From Larry and Wilma Simmons. We first David and his family when they lived in Arkansas. We became friends. Jonathan and our daughter Sarah went to the same Christian school. We have tried to keep in touch since they moved to North Carolina. He will be missed but not forgotten. He is now in the arms of Jesus, the one he put his trust in. May God comfort the family during this difficult time. From Leanne Gabriel. I had the privilege of taking several of Dr. Shannon's agricultural classes while he was at North Arkansas College during the 1998 to 2000 semesters. He was always patient and kind and very encouraging. I continued on my path to get my that's probably Bachelor of Science, in agricultural education because of his influence. GPS was just becoming huge at the time, especially in all the ways it could be used for farming, and he had purchased handheld GPS equipment that we could walk around and mark places we had been on the map. For class one day, he let the 5 of us take the device outside to go log various areas, which ended up including inside the middle of the large culvert on campus, Walmart, the donut shop, and the parking lot outside his apartment. He was not super impressed that we pinned his apartment. We smoothed it over with him by gifting him a singing cactus that we had found in Walmart when we dropped that pin. From Laura Berry. David and I were next door office neighbors at North Arkansas College, and I liked and respected him so much, and missed him when he left North Ark. David used to sing along with old John Denver tapes in his office, which was quite entertaining. They sounded pretty good together. He was a great animal scientist, and to his credit, hardly laughed when my husband and I bought alpacas. I'm so sad to hear this. My deepest condolences to Nancy and Jonathan. David was one of my favorites and just a great guy. From Amy Hudson. Nancy, you and your family are in my prayers. I'm so sorry to hear of David's passing. Your family holds a special place in my heart as I have the best memories from your time in Harrison. I've been following Jonathan on Facebook, and what a handsome young man he is. I know you and David are so proud of him, as you should be. Much love, Amy Hudson. And finally, from Ron and Arleta Kirsch. Nancy and Jonathan, we are so sorry to read of David's passing. Our warmest thoughts and prayers are with you. Our hearts carry precious memories of when you were here. Ron and Arleta. As I conclude, I would be remiss if I didn't include a very real and present reality. Those of us who believe in Jesus have an eternal hope. Though we may endure suffering and loss in this life, there is joy that awaits us in eternity. His death, burial, and resurrection gives us the hope that we have in him as our Savior. If my dad could hear these words, I want to say, God could not have blessed me with a better dad to raise me than you. I will proudly carry your Shannon name. Rest in peace, and I hope to someday be reunited with you in heaven. I look forward to that. Dad, I love you, and until we meet again in heaven, I will miss you. That's all from the Citizen Report. Thank you as always for watching, and thank you for bearing with me as I pay my respects to my dad in this special broadcast. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for watching. Thank you to everybody for your condolences, and most importantly, your prayers. And I will see you right back here again next time. Have a good night, everyone, and I will see you next time.